Hello, my name is Dylan McCone, and today I'll be presenting on the survey results for my research on improving contactless food delivery. I started this project with the design question of how can we improve the experience of contactless food delivery from restaurants to apartments for shoppers? Takeout delivery has been skyrocketing, especially with new services and technologies. COVID-19 pandemic and quarantine has closed a lot of restaurants and kept people inside. And because of this growing need, previous to this survey, I conducted a field observation and interviews to identify pain points and priorities in the delivery process. I discovered a lot of breakdowns in communication, such as with the time and location in delivery, and issues related to how the environments, literally the buildings that being delivered to, present different needs. The purpose of the survey is to confirm and extend the experiences, pain points, and priorities that I discovered in my previous research to a larger population, finding out if it's relevant and necessary. The survey was shared through Google Forms through snowballing. I posted it on several social media platforms, shared it with my friends and family, and then their extended friends and families. It took 5 days of data collection, and I received about 21 responses. 2 were excluded because I required certain participants. Selected participants were Washington State residents for at least 6 months during quarantine. It also required that users actually get delivery delivered, which is defined as at least more than one time every 6 months, and that these participants were actively social distancing. The social distancing aspect is why I required them be Washington State residents. I understand that there are some limitations with the small sample size, and it doesn't represent the entire community, but it is important to note that this survey is building upon previous research. The high-level questions that I'm looking to address in this survey was about common pain points in the communication process. It was highly geared towards that information. I also asked about what aspects of communication participants liked or disliked and their participants therein. The first result confirmed that communication breakdown was the primary cause of many delivery issues for our participants. I needed to extend the results from my field observation and the interviews to make sure that this was still a common issue. I polled users using a Likert scale item on a scale of 1 to 5, asking how satisfied people were with the current quality of communication. That graph is shown here on the right. We have an average and a median of 3, which is sort of neutral considering it's from not at all satisfied to very satisfied. Altogether, though, we can see there's not a really easy distribution of, oh, it's very good or very bad. It seems to vary pretty heavily on the person and the experience. An important component in this result was just confirming that communication is a priority for this larger sample size. I asked participants to prioritize 4 core values that I pulled from the field observation interviews: food condition, short waiting period, health and safety, and clear communication. I also had an individual Likert item scale that asked how important communication was in delivery, a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being very important. I asked a singular rating question and a ranking question because I needed to confirm that this is in fact important and more important than other values. Say a hypothetical participant didn't care at all about these other values, so communication comparatively would be ranked first, even if the inherent importance was pretty low. This research did find that there is a positive correlation between the higher priority ranking and importance, so people did rank it higher in priority because they actually valued it more. And so I can confirm that people did value communication in this larger sample set. Here we have a tree map of the noted communication issues that participants ran into. Of the 37 responses, 25 relate to a lack of communication. We even have 3 noting too much communication. Some of these other examples are didn't know where food was being delivered, waiting in a public space because of inaccurate ETAs, food being delivered to the wrong place, etc. All of this came together to reinforce that communication was a really important value in delivery that wasn't being addressed effectively enough for all different types of users, whether they wanted a lot of communication or very little or the kind. Altogether, it just wasn't working. My second result found that good communication, as defined by the users, required proactive engagement from them. The current setup had users actively engaged or actively working on the delivery process to get information about things like ETA or location. Being able to step away from the process was a noted motivator in the interviews. So being able to make your order and then put your phone down and ignore it until it shows up. That was something that people valued. These proactive forms that we're noting that requires engagement, I found to be more popular and efficient for people. This graph is looking at what information gathering tools were most helpful for participants. The x-axis represents the different tools people use, such as a callbacks or the automated services. The colored bars that are stacked represent the current satisfaction level of participants. I asked this in a Likert item scale, asking about how satisfied they were with current communication from a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the purple, which is very satisfied. We can learn a couple of things through this graph. First, the relative popularity of these different services. Watching tracking options and getting a text or call was much more popular than a doorbell. And I noted that this is to do with it being entirely asynchronous or on a cell phone. Physical infrastructure like doorbells and notifications through the callbacks were less popular. Another component is that there's two different types of tools here. They're either proactive or reactive. And I'm defining this in this case as how engaged you have to be throughout the service in order to get the information you need. So watching tracking options through the delivery service is a perfect example of a proactive. You have to be watching it, paying attention. Depending on what information is providing to you, you make some action and you are actively searching out that information. Things like hearing the doorbell, that would be reactive because you're waiting for them to inform you. These proactive tools, which require active engagement, were actually more popular. Comparing the noted satisfaction level per the information gathering tool, we see that the more actively engaged forms were the most popular and satisfactory. My first recommendation addresses the first two results I came to, and is about personalizing the communication options. I would recommend to delivery services offering a variable option to customers that they fill out during the delivery to note what kind of information they want to receive and how often and how they want to be contacted. Some options can include saying, inform me at every stage, when the ETA changes or estimated time of arrival changes, only when arrival, or even saying things like provide me with pictures of the drop-off point. This can be variable, but this option would be nice. My final result indicates that ETAs, or estimated times of arrival, are more important than short waiting periods. I asked what aspects of communication people prioritized, and 18 responses included accurate ETAs. There were several other issues that were noted here, including driver location tracking and frequent communication. Clearly, communication is something people prioritize, but ETAs were more important. I didn't want to make an assumption about what good communication meant for people. It's all well and good to say that people want good communication, but that's going to vary for people depending on their own circumstances. I asked an open-ended question for people to just define what it meant for them, and I performed some thematic analysis and pulled out 4 main codes. The main one was about accurate and updating ETAs. Only 13 people responded to this question because it wasn't required, but of those 13, 10 had good ETAs as in their definition. Updating ETAs with new information was also noted specifically. Even though ETAs are important, short waiting periods weren't. This is going back to the value ranking that I mentioned earlier of these 4 core values. When I asked people to prioritize this, food condition and clear communication were pretty high priority, but short waiting periods was actually of the lowest. 10 people indicated it the short waiting periods being the lowest, and only 1 person said it was the highest. My final recommendation is about prioritizing ETA updates. I would recommend having a specific time frame difference, wherein changes by this amount, say 5 minutes before or after, would prompt some action or automated response to inform the user of this changed ETA. Another interesting note is that participants in interviews said ETAs were almost always early. While false advertising wasn't discussed explicitly in the survey, the results lead me to believe that falsely advertising a shorter waiting period might be initially more attractive, but would actually be more detrimental than being accurate in the first place. Accuracy is key. In further research, I would emphasize having a larger population. Recruitment is a huge component of this. In order to confirm that this is actually a relevant question with relevant issues, we need to talk to more people. It'd also be interesting to look at a specific apartment building to see how unique environments play a role into the different user needs. I would also conduct additional research. There's a whole other side to the story that I don't capture with these stories because I'm looking specifically at customers. Delivery people and the people at restaurants would have an entirely different perspective or even different issues related to the similar pain points. This project was a lot of fun, but there were definitely some issues I struggled with. I had trouble writing multiple choice questions in particular. Multiple choice is great for large population data analysis because it's really structured, but it necessitates a good amount of leading. You have to give them particular options to choose from. That's generally to be avoided, especially in things like interviews. That was a major component for us, but it was a really difficult balance. I was entertained by a lot of the responses too, especially from some of my friends who indicated to me outside of the survey that they were surprised by how often they got delivery. Having to say that in the survey made them really think about what they were actually doing. Thank you very much for watching my presentation. I hope it was entertaining for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I have my email here on the slide. Thank you and have a nice rest of your day.